So, all right. Welcome back to Nick Lenz Comic Corner, Classic Less Known Classics. This is episode number 2575 and double number 2469. Excuse me. First up, we have the final, from what I can tell, the final Masterworks for the Sub-Mariner. Excuse me, for Modern Sub-Mariner, Volume 8, which collects the Sub-Mariner issues 61 to 72 and Marvel Spotlight 27. Yep. Now, the writing here for most of this, from 61 to 69, is mostly done by the late Steve Gerber. Yep. The first three issues of the co-written, he has some co-writers for his first four issues of this book. First, for 61 to 63, he co-writes it with Bill Everett, Howard Schenken, who also has some artwork too. I think these are backup stories. That's the reason why they're here. Marv Wolfman does a couple issues in here, 70, 71. Steve Skeets. Apparently this issue here was also a cross with Aquaman. Yes, unofficial cross with Aquaman for some reason. And Bill Mansell does Marvel Spotlight 27. Don Heck is your artist for issues 64 to 68. 69 to 71 is basically George DaCosta. 61 is done by about two different artists, Bill Everett and Win Mortimer. 6263 is Sam Kowinski. Howard Schenken, who was also the co-writer. I think it was backup story. The backup story is mostly about Tales of the Atlanteans, which I thought was a really cool concept, but the book itself didn't last much longer with this stuff. Jim Mooney does 65, 66, and the Marvel Spotlight issue. And 72 is done by Dan Atkins. Now, the book itself, basically, 61 and 72 are the final issues of this first volume for Sub-Mariner, which covers the time period of May of 1973 and concludes in 1974. The Marvel Spotlight issue was released in April of 1976. Now, the first four issues in here deal with a story arc involving the Hydro Men. The very first issue, 61, basically has a very key thing for the Avengers make its debut in this issue. That being the famous Hydro Base. Yes, Hydro Base. You know, like, those of you not familiar with Hydro Base, basically around the early to mid 80s, up until Acts Avengers, throughout the 80s, this was the base operations for the Avengers. Until the thing was sunk by Doctor Doom during the Acts Avengers crossover. They had been out versions of Hydro Base since then, but yeah, Hydro Base made its debut in this very book, along with the Hydro Men. There's also former humans who returned to green scale Atlanteans, which, of course, after the story concluded, we had this thing where Namor in issue 65, which was 64, I think it was, where, like, at the conclusion of the story, he basically is aghast at seeing the green scale confronted humans put into a version of concentration camps. He is not happy with this at all, which I agree with him. This was a stupid idea. And it's mentioned that the people who did this are the Council of Elders. It was all their idea for this because, they want to be separated from the pure-blood Atlanteans. And Namor's like, this is stupid. So he proceeds to tear down the frickin' fence and let them live with Atlanteans, no problem. He works with some scientists, and then we deal with basically for the very next set of issues. Yeah, and then basically 64 actually is like the conclusion of the whole thing related to the Hydro Men. Actually, 63 is like three-parter. And then we have from 64 to about 69, we have a brand new villain here. A woman named Vago, who's here from 64, 67. 64 is noteworthy. For being the last issue where it just subtitled be Sub-Mariner Scourge of the Seas. And then from 65 to 72, it is simply known as Prince Namor, the Savage Sub-Mariner. Yes. And it remains under this title. Oh, good, that's my question. Yeah. So it remains under this title for the remainder of the series. But starting issue, I think it was 66, Namor debuts a brand new costume. Extra 67 debuted this costume. Yeah, he fights with Virgo for a couple issues, like basically had to briefly work with her and her people, and of course, basically we see return of an old Namor villain, Orca. Yep, Orca makes the return here. Yeah, he returns this issue for reasons. Yeah, he last appeared in this book back in issue 24. Only his third ever appearance in comics. Appears in the following issue, and then after this, he next appears in Avengers 149. Yep, it's a quick two-parter. And also, Vishanti, who has been pretty much like a main supporting character in this book for a long period of time. Excuse me. Like, after 68, 68 is actually his last time, like, basically he appeared on a semi-regular basis since the Tale of Science issue, where he was previously banished, and then he was reinstated as a counselor. And he basically, after 68, they kind of, in a way, here's kind of the weird thing about Vishanti, they kind of retire him semi, where he basically was a regular supporting character in this book, and now, after 66, basically appears in 68, and, like, next time we count, the appearance of the Sub-Mariner book was in Prince Name with the Sub-Mariner, released in the 1980s. Yep, released in 1984. Yep. The leader of the Council of Elders. Yeah. So, and there's also a woman named Tamora. She is this beautiful, red-skinned woman who kind of becomes Namor's love interest. Kind of. And number T has implied she's got things for her, or him too, but after, basically, she's been here since 58, and after 69, she stops appearing in the book, and then she's appeared sporadically since then. She later returned in the Namor Serena book in 1990s. But 69, sadly put, is her last appearance in the book. She's not appeared for the last few issues of the book. Nope. 67 was noteworthy for debuting Namor's brand new costume. And then, 5 issues after this costume makes its debut, the series gets canceled. I think it got canceled due to low sales. Yeah, the costume is always perfectly fine. I have no problem with the costume. The costumes have also popped up during some issues, popped up for issues of Defenders, which allowed him to quit the team. Yeah, I thought this was a really cool concept. I love the new costume Namor's got. Fantastic Four designed the costume, and the lineup of this book is interesting because the lineup Sue Storm is not on the team at this point in time. This actually is when Sue Storm briefly left the team due to the fact she became estranged from her husband due to the events of the crossover with Fantastic Four 150 and I think issue Avengers. I think it was with the wedding of Crystal and Quicksilver, and Medusa basically filling their spot in the team. That's the reason why Medusa's here. She's filling that spot, and Triton basically makes a quick guest appearance here, and then of course basically we deal with a man named Force, who was basically like, he technically made his first appearance in issue 66 and he returned for 68. He was assistant to another character who had been appearing in the book. Yeah. And also his people, for some reason, decided to wear Iron Man armors. Yeah, I'm not sure why. He kind of, in a way, is one of the final villains of the book. Yep. And then pretty much 69, which also gets appearance by Spider-Man. Yes, Spider-Man. Spider-Man himself last appeared in the previous issue of the book. As a quick cameo set of this book here. His previous appearance actually was in Marvel Team number 17. Yep. Yeah. And it wraps up that kind of story arc. And then basically for the last few issues, it's Namor versus Pariah. Yes. A character who got killed off during the first issue of Marvel Zombies 4. Yep. Yeah. He appears for 2 of the 3 last issues of this book. Now, there's also this Professor Henry Croft, who was turned to a green scale human. He was green scale. Dr. Hydra made him to this. He was a character who made his debut in this book. And after 71, he returned briefly for the next book I'll discuss as a place for this one, MR 2-in-1, for a handful of issues, and that was it. Yeah. So, interesting character. And then for the final issue of the book, Namor just takes on a creature named Slime Thing. Yeah, who looks like a version of Swamp Thing. Yeah, so we have it where in the final issue of this book, Namor is fighting a slime creature and fights someone named Bruce for this one issue. Yeah, and that's really it. Yeah. And that will be the last issue of the book. Yep, last issue of Volume 1. Of course, Namor will appear in the next book. Replacing this book will be I'll discuss that another time. But his next solo appearance after this will be in Marvel Spotlight number 27, which came out just about a couple years later. Which is a book done by, of course, Bill Mantlo. We have the return of Simon Riker in the book, which was a character from Civil and Team Up. I'll discuss him later. Yeah, he apparently gets killed off this issue, and we get the destruction of the Symbiotic Man. Yeah. So, you can think of basically the Namor book, his appearance in Marvel Spotlight is mostly a guest appearance for him outside Civil and Team Up in a way. Yeah, basically, it was crossed with Aquaman 56, which basically was a DC comic. Yes, Aquaman 56. Which Steve Keats wrote the book too. And it was a crossover with Namor. Now, that book in particular, here's something really weird about both books, Aquaman 56 and Namor 72. Here's the weird thing about both books. These two books in particular for both companies were the final issue release this time. No, Aquaman came back not long after that. Sub-Marner did it as an ongoing series. He would not have an ongoing series until the 1990s. The awesomeness that was Namor the Sub-Mariner, which lasted for 62 issues, and I've reviewed a handful of issues already. But in the case of the first regular ongoing series, not associated with the Golden Age book, the first modern Sub-Mariner book that lasts 72 issues, I'm making my final thoughts on this book now. This book was absolutely amazing. I love this book. And here's a little fun fact for you. Did you know Sub-Mariner is one of those two characters in Marvel who's never celebrated a 100 issue? Yeah, never has. You're thinking, really? He hasn't? Given all the books published over the years? Yeah, he hasn't. Now, he would technically have only 2 more ongoing series after this. Only 2. Namor the Sub-Mariner and Namor the First Mutant. And that's it. Because mostly put after this, he mostly would have a handful of a limited series. You could say Giant Assassin Team is kind of an ongoing series, but not a solo series per se. That was a team-up book. But that was the next book he's featured in, which I'll discuss that another time, perhaps. But I'm going to give Namor, Masterworks, The Sub-Mariner Volume 8, a 10 out of 10. I thought it was a really good book. And if you're interested in Avengers, check this book out because it's the debut of Hydra Base. Excuse me. Next up we have is Silver Surfer by Dan Slott and Mike Aldred. Yep. Yeah, this is, of course, the second volume for the book. Yeah, second volume. If I can get to the thing here. Here we go. It's called Worlds Apart. It collects issues 6 through 10 of volume 7 for the series. Now, this book in particular, the first 2 issues are mostly put standalone issues. Now, this, of course, comes from Dan Slott's first of his 2 volumes book. I reviewed volume 1 already, New Worlds. That was a long time ago. But now I'm finally getting to this. The last known Silver Surfer book to come out. Now, it's the only one technically left, if you think about it. Yeah, it is. You could say, well, a project was an episode 1 shot. I might review that later. But the last series to talk about, because after this, the only thing else I'll have to talk about is that next Rebirth series, Rebirth Legacy. Aside from that, this is the only, that book is not finished yet, but this is like the last series to talk about for Silver Surfer, and I have not decided to replace this one yet, but I'll think about it soon. Now, mostly put in the case of these 2 issues, we have basically fighting against a guy called Warrior 1, where they go to this planet, and of course, basically where, like, the only way to beat this guy is if you take off his badge. No, seriously. Yeah. Yeah. Warrior 1. Well, if you're curious, does he come back after this one issue? Yes, he does. In the next volume. This is a one-shot appearance in this volume. He comes back in the next volume for a couple issues. Warrior 2 becomes Warrior 1. Apparently, because the badge was destroyed, become a warrior outcast. Now he's not. Now Warrior 2 is now Warrior 1. And she, of course, also appears one issue in the next volume, and that was it. And now we're discussing the problems with Volume 2, with second volume of this run. The debut of the Primilians. Yeah, these weird species, which, all about badges. I like the whole Warrior 1 character design. I think it was a really cool design. It just that doesn't really appear very much. 7, mostly put, basically, it just, it's another standalone issue, which features the return of Dingalong family as, like, villains. Yeah. And a character named Captain Star. Yep. And the issues 8 through 10 begins a 3-parter. Yep. This is where the Worlds Apart comes in, where we have debut of a place known as New Haven. Yeah, who sadly appears for these 3 issues. New Haven is the best way to describe this place. It is, well, all the planets that Galactus destroyed over the years, like all the survivors of those planets, all convert this one place. And when they see something like, oh crap, not you, you're a herald of Galactus, he's coming, let's get out of here. And of course, Dawn gets mad at him because some children got killed. Though eventually they got over it, and Galactus did show up completely out of nowhere. But he did allow people to evacuate before he basically devoured the planet and had to move someplace else. But I love the whole concept of New Haven. And I love the fact Slott explored this. It's sad the place they don't have a return for this whole entire concept of basically people go after the place is destroyed. Like, if you're curious, there is another New Haven right after this one. Well, in the next story arc. Yeah. That we're discussing basically for another time, perhaps. They appear a few more times after this, and that's it. But I think Slott did a good job with this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And is it sad, though? I'll be talking more about John Greenwood, because here's the weird thing about this woman. It's like, well, it's like she was specifically created for this very book. And she also gets like a ring from Silver Surfer. Yeah, and, well, I'll be discussing basically what happens with her later on, because basically what happened with her is very sad. Seriously. Yeah, it's very, very sad what happens to her. I'll discuss that another time, perhaps, when I discuss the end of the volume. Yeah. Because basically, there will also be a bit of ranting I will be discussing when I discuss the last story arc of this run by Dan Slott, because, oh boy, he said something about this book okay, I'll do this now, but when the book concluded in 2016, I think it was, with the next volume, no one had any idea the book was even still being published. Nope, no one had any idea. And Slott said, oh, I did advertise it twice in Amazing Spider-Man. Really? Where? Where's your advertisement? It's a good question. But I'll discuss more about that when I discuss the very last trade for this run. And basically there is 3 more trades left. Yep, just 3. Yep. The next trade will finish this volume. And then it's on to volume 8 for Silver Surfer. Yep. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for particular view. Stay tuned for my next view, which will be talking about the final episode of 100 Girlfriends. Okay, next view. Bye.